All right, before I start the video, I want to say if you feel like it, you can go ahead and speed up the video if I'm talking too slow or if I seem like I'm beating around the bush. Thank you for watching. Peace. Welcome to the Jerry Gray channel. This is a channel that talks about how to produce justice. I wanted to get into a topic about black economics. What can black people do to fight the system of white supremacy, um, and basically release the economic stranglehold that they have on us? All right, so when I hear other black people talk about this, I think that they get too focused on just the whole starting businesses aspect of it, and that's the main part of any economy. Like you need your own businesses, you need people that to buy black, but I think that you can be more creative with it than just doing that. Like there's a macro sense of solving any problem. You know, the theory behind it, buying black, starting your own businesses. You know, being less dependent. That's the macro sense, right? But then you have a micro. How does it look on a day to day individual level? What can a person do day to day to boost the economy besides just trying to by black? And that question isn't answered, and I'm going to attempt to answer that here. All right, so first of all, I want to just give like a quick I, theory behind economics and what economics means. All right, so first of all, everybody knows about inflation. Everybody knows about how your money isn't always going to be worth the same thing. Like money that we have is just a currency, and the value of it constantly changes. The white supremacists determine the value of money. With that being said, that is something that you need to understand. It's not just about getting a whole bunch of money. That's not going to all completely solve the problem. It's really about being the resources. That's really the economy, having control over resources, right? The resources, how many goods can you afford with the money that you have, right? Or not even just afford, how many goods are you able to obtain? Because somebody can give you goods, you know. um so with that being said, uh, the main goods that determine economy, uh from my understanding right now, this might change. Like all of this is theory, but it's basically food and gas. I would say also housing as well, because those are three things that you pretty much have to buy, right? Um, so in food and gas, the price it can go up, and people are going to have to pay for it anyway. So it can dilute your money at any given point in time. Like when gas prices go up, it's like, dang, I just got poor, and I don't understand. Like I can't buy anything now. Like if you're making an average amount of money, everybody can feel that pressure, right? And that's the reason why there's always wars and things being fought over it. So with that being said, you have to basically the in a macro sense underneath the macro sense. The macro sense of black economics is owning businesses, major enterprises. So I think that underneath that would be um, completely pulling yourself like off the grid type of living, you know, where you don't have to buy gas, you know, like you have a solar powered car or some other form of transportation that's reliable, where you no longer have to buy gas. And just in general, like the amount of money to travel has greatly gone down for you, you know. Um, and usually that's going to be like a solar powered car or something like that, right? Um, then the second thing would be having a house that's paid for. A lot of people, they want to buy all these expensive houses and things like that. But if you're constantly having to pay for it and pay for it and pay for it, you know, that's not going to you're still relying on a system, you know. Once you get to the point where you own a house or own some land and you don't have to pay anybody else anymore, it's yours, you know, you've relieved yourself of those economic stressors. Like you've pulled yourself out of it. And then the final thing is food. And it would look like most black people having land or some enough land to grow food on, and it just becoming um, a big thing. Just I mean, as far as having enough land or enough space to grow food, because we can get even more creative with it, where you have aquaponics and all these type of things, hydroponics and things like that, to the point where people are no longer relying on buying food, or you buy such a small amount of food and you're growing enough food to the point where you're selling it and you're good, right? So that would be the macroist of senses is just earning so much money that food and transportation and all that is so cheap that it's like it's nothing to you, right? But then another macro sense is underneath that more people can achieve, right? Because in the system it's kind of hard to achieve that, because it's just they make it where they just aren't going to pay everybody enough, and everybody's not going to be able to start a business, right? So um with that being said, the other macro sense for a person who can't who isn't in position to do that, I shouldn't say can't, because they can, but if they aren't in the position to do that yet, would be also striving for that goal, um, and pulling themselves out of the economic pressure. So that's the macro sense, but still trying to achieve that on a micro sense would be, if you're not in the position to do that, any individual can still find ways to travel very cheaply. And that looks like getting an e-bike, electronic bikes, which can help you ride longer distances, and ride faster, and getting to places where you know what I mean, living closer to where you work, so you're not paying out the pocket for gas every day, or getting a motorized bike, not a motorcycle. Like a motorcycle, if you feel like you're willing to risk your health, but I don't suggest a motorcycle. But like a bicycle where you can kind of ride in your own lane, or ride on a sidewalk, and have an engine that helps propel you forward, because they have those cheap engines that you can put on bicycles and things like that. Now, that's on the most microest of senses, where it doesn't cost. Most people can afford that. Um, Even a solar powered car, like on a macro sense, if you can get a car that's, because a lot of people sell their cars for cheap when they don't have an engine that works. If you can just get a car, you can get a decent car that doesn't have a working engine, and just take the engine out and fix it up to run off of solar power. And that's something that you could just read up on and learn how to do yourself, right? And it would only cost you a few $1,000s to be able to get one going, and hopefully keep it going, right? um, because over the course of your years, you're going to spend like dang near $100,000 on gas, over the course of your lifetime, um, and that can harm you, right? And just imagine the amount of food, how much money you spend on food. Like you're going to spend like at least 3 or 4 or 5 times that on food every throughout the course of your lifetime. So, and but anyway, the point is that studying these ways and working towards those same goals, reducing transportation costs, reducing food costs, and reducing housing costs, um, but learning how to do that on each level, no matter where you're at financially, can greatly help our whole situation, because that boosts our economy, just being able to obtain the goods that you need, or more of the goods that you need, without having to earn more money, even though you can still at the same time work on earning more money. Um, but before I get into that, um, so how would you do it with food? Go to the food bank. If you're making $8 or $10 an hour, you don't really have that type of money to spend on food, right? And hopefully, Black people can get into a position where they're, on a macro sense, a non-entrepreneurial economic macro sense, where they might not own a business, but they've got the solar power car, they got the house, not a huge house, but a house is paid for, and they got some land to grow food, and we can start our own food banks, right? So then somebody who's on a lesser scale, on a more micro scale, right, can get food without having to pay for it, or get some of their food without having to pay for it. Um, if they're making like $10 an hour, $8 an hour, or something that's, you know, very economically binding, right? But until then, from churches, and try to start a small farm, or start trying to grow like just a little bit of food with whatever space that you have, and just things like that can help, using coupons, actually taking that seriously. And as far as shelter, basically trying to maybe live with roommates, things like that. If you're on the most micro scale, just saving your money and trying to not overspend in that category. Buy a cheaper place to stay with, that won't cause you health concerns or anything like that. Or and there's many of ways to try to save money, as far as how you shelter yourself, and you just got to read into that, and make the decisions that are right for you. But again, all three of these principles need to be applied on the micro is of senses. And then the next way is just to try to constantly be trying to earn more money. Whether um, I wouldn't suggest doing what everybody else does, where they're just looking for an extra dollar or two an hour, and then constantly switching jobs, because you can end up losing a job and just being out of it, because it's kind of like you just need to get a place that'll hire you and allow you to be there, without firing you the first time that the business slows down. And that's what happens with some of these places that are low labor experience, or um, low knowledge jobs, where they pay you a high amount, but as soon as the labor slows down, they're looking to get rid of people, or there's some type of health hazard to it, or something. There's a reason why they're paying extra money. So if you are going to get extra money, you want to make it where there's a reason for it. So that would be, what everybody always talks about, which is just increasing your knowledge with trade, trade school, starting on a micro sense, not always just being like, okay, well, I'm just going to go for a business, even though you want to, but still put in that work to build yourself up, just because it's difficult to do this whole, just doing it, trying to make a business this whole time. Like, you can end up basically wasting a lot of time. Not to say that you can't do it. All I'm saying is that you should have a plan for each level. So while you're pursuing your business, still go ahead and get a trade. If you don't have one, go ahead and go to school, at least a little bit, a couple hours. Try to get a couple hours in a year or a semester, and just constantly be working on that goal of uh, and that's the thing. If you don't clear up and fix your money situation on the smaller scales, which, like I said, with transportation and all that, then it's like, as far as you ever trying to get to school, or as far as you ever trying to pay for a trade, that's the thing that holds people back. Like, trade schools and all that are easy to get into, but at the same time, it's always just a little bit harder than what you think. Like, because you're constantly, it's black people are constantly getting fired, especially black men. Most people aren't going to have a stable income, so then to pay for these classes and things like that, and it seems like you're going to get there. You end up losing your job right before you can get there. So just clearing up the all the other little things that get in the way, and living as inexpensively as possible, makes it more likely that it can happen. Like you can actually get your license or something like that and try to get into these higher uh, amounts of income where you're making more than at least more than 15 or $20 an hour. Now, again, all these examples that I'm talking about, where I'm saying $8, $20, I'm giving specific figures. In the future, the amount of money, the value of money is going to change. So even $8 might not even be like something that you could even pay somebody anymore, or so $15, $20, that sounds good right now, but if you're watching this 20 years from now, who knows what, what that's really going to be. So you got to, again, the value of money is really determined by the goods that you can purchase. So uh, do some of your determining based off of that. But that's all I got for you right now. I don't really want to over talk the subject. Have, but the main idea is to have a plan for each level, and I think that again, this is an African way of living in the first place because that's how we naturally lived before we were colonized. We didn't overuse or uh, harm the land the way that we do. Um, if you can, like I said, like on a micro sense, you drive less or have you use less gas to get to places where you're going to be because you have a motorized bicycle or something like that, or you just um, you don't use any gas, you just ride a bike. That right there, that helps the planet, and that's how we are naturally are. That's our natural values at place. We're not wasteful. We grow our own food. We grow food, and we start a food bank and make sure that food is used. We don't throw it away. Just like all of that is the natural way of doing things, and it needs to be applied on an. It's a natural African way of doing things, and it should be applied when we are talking about black economics. And that's all I have for you. Peace.